Christian, how to walk like a Christian, how to talk like a Christian, how to carry my Bible like a Christian, how to quiz like a Christian. I mean, I was an awesome Christian, but I was about this deep.
I grew up in Michigan, and my dad was a pastor. I think I learned really quickly how I was supposed to act. My brother is 4 years younger than me. He was always the good boy, and I felt like sort of the black sheep of the family. Everything he did just seemed to be perfect and effortless, and I always felt like I was just making mistakes and disappointing my parents. I know that's not the reality of the situation, and that's not how it was, but that's definitely how it felt. I was really close with my dad and my mom both, but my dad in particular, I saw him as this bigger-than-life, amazing man that also put a lot of pressure on me because I felt like any mistake I made would disappoint him. I had actually become really good at lying from first grade, really all the way through my first year in college. I started going to therapy when I was in second grade. The therapist is trying to get the truth out of me, and I was there because I was a pathological liar. So I went through 9 different therapists in a matter of 10 years. As I got into high school, I really started to lose sense of what was really who I was and what was really the act that I was portraying to everyone else. At school, I was one person. At church, I was very much that perfect Christian girl. At home, I think I was just a mess. I graduated under this view of this perfect person. As I went into college, I went to Western Michigan University. I thought very much that I could sustain that I could continue to be that person that I was.
Within my first year, my first freshman year, I mean, I had become like a Tuesday through Sunday alcoholic. I was drinking all the time, and I was going to a state school, so it was really easy to do that. And just through that, I had done some things that I was sure God could never forgive me of. I had done some things with boys that I couldn't take back, and I just felt worthless. I felt like everything that I had learned all the way up to that point in my life, I had just thrown out the window. I had turned from God and chosen to walk away. And I didn't know how to get back, to be honest.
Afraid she's gone too far away, too far.
I was dirty now, and I was sorry. I was used goods, and I had done this to myself, and I just hated myself for it. And it would cause me just to go into this spiral of depression and pain. As I left my first year of college, I definitely couldn't go back to my parents' house. I felt like, they would immediately know all the things that I had done. So I got a little apartment, and that summer, it just kept getting worse. I would sit there by myself at night and have no one to talk to, and I just felt so alone and so isolated, and I had pushed away everyone who had loved me, all of my friends, all of my family. I had broken up with some boy and just thought, well, that's it. I'm done. Like, I'm tired of being hurt by people. I'm tired of hurting other people. I got a bunch of pills and a bottle of alcohol, and I decided to call the ex-boyfriend that I just broke up with and tell him that I was sorry that I hurt him, and I was sorry that I'd caused all this issue. I was sorry for what I had become. When I hung up the phone from him, I took the pills and I swallowed down a whole fifth of vodka, and I just kind of curled up.
And I just laid there in my apartment by myself, and I waited to die. And I just begged to die. I wanted it to be over.
He had heard the pain in my voice and knew that that I was in trouble. He called 911. The first fireman to come through my door was a guy that went to my dad's church. And the first feeling I felt was just shame again, like how could this be happening? Of all times, in my deepest, darkest hole, in comes this person that is just gonna judge me and hate me and tell my dad and tell everyone else, And he came over and he just grabbed me in his arms and told me that it was gonna be okay and that he loved me and he was praying for me. And he got me into the ambulance, and when we got to the hospital, I begged him, please don't call my dad, please don't call my dad. And he promised he wouldn't, but he said he needed to call someone. So he called another guy from my church that was kind of my youth pastor, and so he came down to the hospital, and he came in, and he just started talking to me about forgiveness and about God. And at first I didn't want to hear it, and I didn't really want him to be there. But the more he talked, the more I just felt like there was no reason not to at least try to ask God for forgiveness. I mean, the worst that could happen is he would just say, no, you're too far gone. He prayed with me, and I asked God to forgive me kind of half-heartedly, honestly, because I didn't think it was possible, but I was doing it more because he asked me to. And when he left, I kind of said another prayer more from my heart and just said, God, if all the things that I learned growing up as a kid are true, and you're really there and you really love me, I need you. I have nothing left. I've tried so many different things to make people love me and to be who I think I'm supposed to be, and it's just not good enough, and I don't know what else to do. I slowly began the process with God of trying to figure out what this new life was about. I wish I could say that, that night in that hospital bed, I felt this overwhelming forgiveness and grace, and everything was pretty, and it just worked out great, but it didn't. I mean, it took a long time and a lot of hard work of daily trying to understand who I was in Christ. I really began to see how God wanted to have a relationship with me, and it was not about how many scriptures you memorize or how many Bible stories you know or how many people you witness to. It was about how much of my heart I gave to God. He really began to clean up my life and show me a path that I never thought I could have. During that time, I met a man who worked in Nashville on a Christian television show, sort of a MTV for Christians. It's called Fish TV. He asked if I'd be interested in having a job there as a video jockey. So I moved to Nashville. I traveled with bands, and I learned a lot about the music industry and about Christian music. While I was in Nashville, I began talking with a friend that I had back in Michigan. He was not a Christian, and we would talk for hours and hours on the phone at night about God and about what God was doing in my life. Slowly, I began to fall in love with him. One night, he accepted Christ over the phone. That was a really cool thing for me, because this was the first real experience that I had of leading someone to Christ. I mean, before I had done it, but it was more, I was racking up numbers of how many people I could save. And this person was someone that I really cared about, and I desperately wanted to find Christ because I cared for him. Several months passed, and he moved down to Nashville. He asked me to marry him. Of course, I said yes. We decided to move back to Michigan. Both of our families are here. So we moved back and we got married and started going to my dad's church. I really felt like that was where we needed to be. I felt like that's where God was leading us. I became a worship leader at the church, and I felt like I had a good life and I was excited, in what God was doing, but I felt like there was still something out there that I couldn't quite see, but I knew He had prepared me for. I was talking with a guitar player that's on the worship team with me, and he was in a Christian band. They were looking for a new singer. And he said, well, why don't you just come out and audition and we'll see where it goes. There was several different auditions that I went through, and they chose me to be the new lead singer. The first concert we did, Jason asked me to share a little bit of my story. As we got into the concert and we got to the spot where I was supposed to talk, I opened my mouth to speak, and my whole life story just started flowing out of me, and I was not planning to share all of that information, but I started talking about the depression and the attempted suicide and the things that I had felt growing up, and I shared the hope that I felt now and how I saw that God could restore that brokenness. Afterwards, a mother came up to me. She was in tears, sharing with me about her daughter. Her story was almost identical to what I had shared. I wrote a song called Hold On, and it was really for her. I mean, it was sort of for me, the me that was going through that at the time. It just talks about the fact that there was a hope, that the end didn't need to be suicide. It didn't need to end that way. And that if she could just hold on for a little bit longer, she could see God is just waiting for that one moment where you can release that cry for help. And it doesn't have to be even physical words, but just in your spirit to just say, God, I need you. I don't want to be where I'm at. Then that's the first step. One of the first few shows that I did with Messenger, I had a flood of 12 different teenage girls come to me in tears. They were just so moved to see that I had been where they were. And as I went home that night, I just felt overwhelmed with the blessing that God could bring me to a spot in my life where not only could I feel whole, but I could help someone else feel that. And that all the things that I had been through and all the pain and the heartache and the brokenness that I had gone through could help someone else in their life. That was just more than I could have ever asked for. My life now is not at all what I would have pictured. I'm married. We have 2 beautiful children. As much as I went through and as much as I felt so far away from God, to now look back and see God's hand in all of that, His love in that, is just so awesome. When I share my story and I'm able to share the hope of Jesus Christ. And so I kind of found my place.
Just hold on. Don't give in.